asked to keep the house lights up because I want to try, if at all possible, to get a little bit of an understanding of who this audience is. A group of CIOs sort of has all these prejudgments and assumptions on my part as to who you are and what your level of interest is in the subject matter, etc. So what I want to try to do, though, is I want to do a quick psychographic profile of the audience. It's something that my organization is an applied research company. What I mean by applied research is we fundamentally understand all of the elements of human productivity and human growth. How do you actually get people to be more effective at doing the stuff that you want people to do? Now, underneath that, there's a lot of diagnostics, and this is a diagnostic that is not as statistically significant as most, but we can do it pretty quickly. Take out a piece of paper in front of you, if you don't mind. Grab your pens. And one of the other things we're going to be doing in this discussion, because I really do believe that I want to try to make it more of a dialogue than actually just a talk or a speech, is I want to make this as action-oriented as possible so the paper and pencil will be relevant for a number of things, because I want you to leave here being more capable of developing the kind of relationships and relationship action plans for implementation and change management for the projects that you have in the given year and for your careers. So hopefully we'll be a little bit more action-oriented than most speakers and a little bit more engaging. But here, let's go for this for the diagnostic. So I'm going to read 4 shapes and sizes, just 4, in a sequential row that really mean nothing, but whichever one of them jumps into your mind the most, whichever one grabs your attention the most, whichever one is the forefront of your thinking, don't ask, question, or judge what that means. Just go ahead and write it down, all right? Don't ask, question, or judge. Just go ahead and go with it and write it down, and then we'll talk about it, what that means. All right, here you go. A circle, a triangle, a square, a Z. Circle, triangle, square, Z. Write one of those shapes down, please. If you can't think of one right now, that says something about you. It'd be much too embarrassing to share, so we won't go there. All right, everybody have something down? Just out of curiosity, anybody put more than one of those down on the piece of paper? Did any of you write more than one? That's good. Okay, good. Because I said only one, and that would have also talked about your personality disorders that we would talk about afterwards. So here we go. Circles, raise your hands. Oh my God. That really is shocking to me. More than 50% of the audience are circles. I say that because I would have never expected that from a group of CIOs. It's never happened, and I've been doing a lot of talks these days with many of your organizations, particularly if you're, members of the Big Six and software folks, etc., to CIO audiences. Never seen more than 50%. But let me explain what that means. That means that more than 50% of you, good news, you're out-of-the-box thinkers. You embrace change. Good in the rapidly changing environment that we're going to be talking about at this event. These are individuals that are out-of-the-box thinkers, but they also are people that do embrace people, all right? Now, the thing about you is you specifically avoided anything that boxed you in. Anything that made you feel claustrophobic in any way. Straight edges, pointy corners, etc. you avoided. As a result, more than 50% of this audience, a particularly undisciplined group of individuals. So I don't know if if that relates to you or not, but I was just shocked, all right? Triangles, raise your hands. Ooh, good. Keep them up. Keep them up. Keep them up. Indicative of being here on a Sunday, but keep them up because anybody sitting next to a triangle, be careful. There's a whole table of them there, so that's really frightening. And by the way, the ones that just kept their hands up even longer after I said be careful, be even more careful, all right? Because the triangles will do anything to get to the top of an organization as quickly as possible. In this room, they're the most ruthlessly driven individuals. They will stop at nothing as a result of that ambition. But make sure that before you leave today, get their business cards, identify who they are, and for God's sake, stay on their good sides, okay? Who put a square? No, it's okay. The world needs accountants too. It's not a problem, seriously. Oh, you're so embarrassed. That's great. Good for you to be proud of that because all of you circles, what's your name, sir? Frank. All of you circles desperately need Frank, okay? These are the individuals with discipline, with rigor. They're the folks who actually bound out into the world and have process. They're the people who come to an event like this. They're the individuals that, by the way, does not mean that Frank is some weenie-dweeby guy, all right, that doesn't connect with people, that has nothing to do with a square and that old high school vernacular. But Frank will, in fact, meet people. Frank will collect business cards. But by the end of the tonight, Frank will be entering the names in a database. That's who Frank is. These 4 individuals are the only one in their entire company using their CRM system. Having started the CRM practice at Deloitte many of years ago for for our practice, I certainly know what that means. And then there's the Z's. Then there's the Z's. Now, don't raise your hands. That would, in fact, be too embarrassing for any of you, because Z's just preoccupied with booze and sex. We have yet to find any socially redeeming value for you, and if at this stage any of you are interested in changing to a Z just to make the event more fun, stand up. Go right. No. But the Z's, I'm only kidding, the Z's are the nonconformists. These are the individuals, normal shapes, sizes, etc. They did it their way. Look, the reason I wanted to start with this little exercise, while it was actually something that we started researching way back at Harvard Business School when we were doing something called the service profit chain. He's very proud of his Z, aren't you? You really are. That's fantastic. What's your name, sir? Dave? Dale. Oh, Dale, this is your thing. This is great. Well, and he's the guy who hired me. Oh, great. By the way, so I would assume, I would assume that this better be a damn good event if Dale's organizing this one, all right? So you should have some fun tonight. All right. But one of the things that is important as you're thinking about what all of this just meant is this. What we're going to be talking about today is the psychology and the anatomy of productivity enhancement. We're going to be talking about the psychology and the anatomy of running business, the psychology and the mindsets and the processes of how to manage people associated with getting stuff done, increasing productivity, project management, etc. And what's important to recognize is that as much as we could do a lot of very demographic profiling, ultimately human behavior change does not boil down to demographic profiling or even functional profiling. It boils down to psychographic profiling. What I mean by that is every one of you is a very unique and interesting animal. And I say animal because that's very important. For years we have run a research institute that had a lot of PhDs, MDs, psychologists, psychiatrists, etc. But it wasn't until we started adding the anthropologists and the sociologists that we really started having some breakthroughs in human behaviors in organizations. And the reason for that is because as much as we're talking about the human behavior and psychology of human behavior and behavior change, what we're really talking about is how animals, i.e. humans, change, think, behave, and interact with others. And it all goes back to about 70,000 years ago, when everybody in this room was hardwired as a Homo sapien in Africa among 17 distinct tribes. So in your DNA, if you weren't in one of these tribes, think about this for a second, right? Your ancestors and the way you were created, if you weren't in a tribe, you were eaten by something. Do you understand that? And that very basic human instinct to connect, to commune, to support, to relate, is so critical to who you are. Now that said, you speed ahead 70,000 years, and unfortunately tribes don't exist like they used to. We've spun by a bunch of years where tribes did exist, where family units ate together, and they don't anymore. Where cities and towns were actually communities. Where organizations were actually tribes. Where people cared and connected and bonded and did things with each other that were powerful and integrated, and you wouldn't let each other fail because, frankly, if you did let each other fail, the whole unit would be at risk. Unfortunately today, because of lots of reasons, whether that's technology or mobilization and others, we have really gotten down to the point when your tribal instincts are so very down to the individual and so isolated that you have become tribes of one. Now, that's when the negative stuff associated with tribal behavior kicks in, because the negative stuff associated with tribal behavior is that when you walk out into the world, it's us, our tribe, happens to just be you and them, everyone else. And you don't know how to relate in a connected manner. You make assumptions when it's us versus them. You make negative assumptions because in those 17 tribes originally when you were hardwired, if it wasn't a part of us, they were going to hurt you. They were a them. Does that make sense to you? If you understand what I'm saying, just say, I get it. So the good news is that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to suggest to everybody in this room that all you've got to do to be successful in managing the more effective relationships of your life, in effect for business success, and I'm going to make that linkage for a second, is to fall back on what your core DNA and what your human instincts want you to do anyway. Which is why when you do it, and you periodically connect with a business associate, with a team, with a partner, with a boss, you relax into a place that really feels right in your core. You know what I'm saying? One more time. I'm going to track. Tell me you get it. All right.